Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of the Web of Conspiracy. I am your host, Adam Webb. It's great to be back with you this week. I apologize for not being able to do the broadcast live today. Just had some time issues. However, I was able to go ahead and release this a little bit early for everybody. So I hope everyone enjoys today's episode. Um, a few announcements first and foremost. I did want to address, I got a little bit of questions asking. I did have what I hope is my last surgery to remove melanoma yesterday. It was essentially an outpatient procedure. It wasn't even done at the hospital. It was done at the surgeon's his office. So it was a relatively minor procedure, all things considered. I'm very hopeful to get some very good results there. It'll be a little bit of time before I actually have the final pathologies on all that. So we'll keep our fingers crossed and just want to thank everybody once again for all your thoughts and your prayers. It's greatly appreciated. Um, but I'm hopeful that this will be it. This will be the last treatment in terms of the surgery, and as far as what goes from there, I'm not sure. I've not got to that point yet, but nevertheless, I don't plan on changing anything that I'm doing here. This show will continue for as long as I'm capable of doing it. So, once again, just thank you for all your thoughts and your concerns, and it's been greatly appreciated. Um, a few other announcements here. I'm in the process of doing some research and some investigating into trying to uh, be able to expand and hope to be able to start bringing in some guests for the show. I've been doing this show now here on Spreaker for about, let's see, 3 months now, and prior to that, I had this show on another network, and I've really been wanting to get a chance to try to start bringing in some guests. As much as while I think some of you enjoy listening to me talking about some of these subjects, I think I'd like to be able to get a little more feedback. So I'm in the process of being able to expand my system in my conspiracy studio at home and see what I can do in terms of being able to bring in some guests, maybe bring in some guests via Skype or phone calls. And so I'm working on that to see what's feasible given my limited budget. But that's something I'm planning on here, hopefully sooner rather than later. Um, but I will keep everybody informed. And in the meantime, I'm also going to start actively looking for guests at the same time in terms of being able to possibly uh, have some lined up in the near future. So, looking forward to that. Also, if you haven't already, go check out the show's social media pages. I've gotten a little bit of activity on there lately, um, trying to, as much as possible, give updates on there. I have not been as active this past couple weeks as I would have liked to have been, but nevertheless, I still update that and still do a lot of show announcements on there as well as on the show's website. And speaking of the show's website, there's been a URL change. I've done quite a bit of updating to it over the last couple weeks. There's been a URL change, so if you bookmarked it before and you're not getting back into it and you're wondering what's going on, it's because there's been a slight address change. The URL now for the website is Web of Conspiracy, all one word, .wix.com, and then backslash web dash of dash conspiracy. Um, and that change happened, and I'm not sure that I addressed it very clearly in the last show, so I wanted to make sure that I put it out there for everybody. Um, so if you've already still using the old bookmark and you can't get to the show's website, that would be why. So use that bookmark, use that new URL, bookmark it, and you'll be fine. Um, at this point in time, I'm not planning any other domain changes as of yet. It's certainly something I want to do. This website address is so long, but when you're working on budgetary constraints, you use what you can. So I'm doing the best I can with what I've got at the moment. Um, Also, I know I've talked about it now the last couple of weeks, but I just want to put it out there one more time. The show is now available on Stitcher Radio on demand, so you can listen to the show anytime on demand through your Stitcher app, via, for your iPhone, your iPad, Android, even your Nooks. It's available all over the place. It's an awesome app. I personally use it. Listen to. It's got all kinds of stuff on there. So if you don't already have Stitcher, check it out. The show is now available on Stitcher. And if you have Stitcher, please feel free to review and rate the show. If you post reviews and rate the show, it'll get put up into the feed, so it'll more or less help the show get a little bit more recognized and hopefully gain even a bigger audience. That being said, the last few weeks on the show, it's amazing to me just how many people are tuning in. I'm floored. So thanks to all those who keep coming back, and thanks to all the new listeners now. Each month, the show just seems to grow a little bit more and more and more, and this month was a big month. So, and it's not even over. And so I'm really excited about that. And hopefully I can continue to deliver some of this entertainment. And as I said, want to really kind of be able to give you a little bit more. That being said, next week I'm planning on doing a best of episode next Friday. I'm not going to be broadcasting a live episode this coming Friday as of right now, unless things change. But I will be doing a best of. I've had a couple of people who, when they used to listen to the show on the old network, ask about a show that I did back over the summer about black-eyed kids. So I've decided I'm going to readdress the black-eyed kid phenomenon. And so next Friday is going to be Black Eyed Kids. And then after that, I've got some other really great shows lined up. I think we're going to talk about Poltergeist. I'm even going to get into talking about something that's become a little bit more popular. The History Channel now has a show about, or at least has a documentary show about it called The Oak Island Mystery. And I'm going to discuss the Oak Island mystery more or less, and do a show on that as well. It's kind of intriguing, a little bit of a interesting story there. So that show I'm also going to be planning. And there's always a chance and that I may end up starting to bring in more than one episode a week. As of right now, I'm still doing the one episode plan, but at the moment, I'm thinking about expanding and being able to do a little bit more than one episode a week. If that's the case, I'll certainly announce it ahead of time. But it seems as if though I have most of my listeners via podcast, so being able to offer as much as possible, I think would be a great opportunity, and kind of be able to deliver a little bit more to the audience. So I'm looking to expand the show. I'm looking to be able to do a lot of different things with it. And given the recent success that I've had with the show that I really didn't see coming, I'm really excited about being able to try to expand and do even more and deliver even more for everybody, because I enjoy doing this. Yeah, I know it's a hobby, but when you find something that you're passionate about, and it's fun to do. And so if I can reach people, which has always been my goal, is to try to make these topics more acceptable for discussion. Um, I think it's important that we bring legitimacy to these discussions of the paranormal and the unexplained and conspiracy. While I tend to be very critical of conspiracy, I think that there's something to be said about a lot of conspiracy theories. I think that there is a little bit of truth in all of it. And given what we do know about a lot of things, including the government spying on us and all these things that that we didn't realize were at least didn't fully acknowledge were happening, turned out to actually be happening. I think we need to take a serious look at some of these more fringe, air quotes, fringe topics, and kind of look at them and say, okay, wait a minute, maybe they're not so fringe after all. Maybe there really is something here. Maybe there really is something going on. And for those of you who've been listening to me long enough, know that I certainly feel that way about the topic of extraterrestrials. I do believe that they have come to this planet. Um, I don't know that I buy every single story that is told by everyone that's ever told a story about extraterrestrials. Nevertheless, I do think that they exist, and I do think that they have come to this planet, either in the past or currently. So, and I do think that our government is very aware of this and are actively looking to suppress that knowledge as much as possible. That being said, I think that there are other conspiracies that the government is possibly involved in. And one of these conspiracies is what I'm going to talk about today, and that's HAARP. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar with HAARP, HAARP is an acronym for the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program. Now, this main base is stationed near Gakona, Alaska. Now, this program, this station that was built there in Alaska, was built in 1990, and it was built in joint cooperation by both government, universities, and private research groups. The Air Force, the Navy, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, the University of Alaska, um, MIT, Stanford, just to name a few of the universities. Uh, and in terms of private firms investing into this program, there's SRI International, Geospace Inc., Northwest Research Associates Incorporated as well, all invested in this project. Now, what is believed to be, at least what is claimed to be going on with this program, is that it's a site that researches the natural processes that occur in the ionosphere, which is part of our atmosphere, a layer of the atmosphere, under natural but much stronger influence of solar interaction. Experiments with radio signals in the ionosphere, and it's done to develop technology to use that can be essentially to determine if what can be done in terms of what kind of effect the ionosphere has, uh, and ways to develop technology to take advantage of this. Now, when you read that, it's a little suspicious there in and of itself. Well, what exactly, is developing the technology? What's the plan here? Well, there are those that contend that this project is actually designed for a more malicious intent. That many believe that this facility can control the weather. Now, for those living in the northern and eastern part of the United States, you would look at this and think, well, maybe there's something to this, given the surge of cold air that we had a couple weeks back, and the surge that's anticipated going into next week. Um, the polar vortex, which I find an incredibly funny term for anybody who's familiar with the idea of what a vortex is. It's not a really great way to describe a polar air mass, which is really the better way to describe this. Nevertheless, um, we've had one of those polar air masses, another one coming this week. So everyone's talking about all this really cold weather. Well, first off, it's not abnormal. Not really. This used to be far more common. It's less common over the last 25 years than in 30 years than it has been prior to that. But nevertheless, it is very cold and dangerously cold. So it leads many to bring up the topic of HAARP. I've heard it mentioned in a number of conspiracy sites and sort of getting a little bit of a surge again. So I wanted to really be able to address this topic a little bit more today. Now, there are a number of these facilities that are scattered across the globe that are conducting similar research and doing similar things. One of them is located in Norway, another in Russia, another in Peru, and another in Puerto Rico. Now, there are also those that say that they're involved with HAARP, but that they argue it does not transmit enough energy to alter the atmosphere. They're taking these radio waves and concentrating them on certain parts of the ionosphere. Now, they argue that, yeah, okay, well, that's what we're doing, but it's not strong enough. It's not strong enough. However, HAARP contradicts the statement in answering about other installations. The website states that HAARP is unique to most existing facilities due to its combination of research tools, which provides electronic beam steering, wide frequency coverage, and high effective radiation power, collated with a diverse suite of scientific observational instruments. So they claim they're unique, yet, however, there's also other facilities across the globe that do the exact same research. Now, they, in that statement, very much praise what they can do. They can direct this beam of energy to any specific part in the ionosphere that it's attempting to direct it to. And that's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing that we could harness that kind of power. Now, you have to wonder about the idea that the weather control. Well, there are people who claim that this energy can be used to heat certain parts of the ionosphere. And of course, when you heat the atmosphere, you can change air mass. You can change whether something. You can essentially direct air masses, and in doing so, you can steer storms. You could do a number of different things in theory if they in fact have this much power. There's a number of things that could be done. Now, they claim that they can only do a small part of the atmosphere. That's what they claim. However, there are those who believe that they can do much larger things, much greater things. I'm talking about the tornado outbreaks in the Midwest this last year, last summer. Last December there was Superstorm. Well, I think it was last December of 2012, the Superstorm Sandy. Many claim that perhaps that was related to it. You talk about Hurricane Katrina, that it would appear that some of these storms that moved in a particularly odd pattern or were significantly stronger, that it's believed that perhaps this government control process is going on here, that this is being done on purpose. There's unusual radar signals that are often attributed to HAARP prior to a storm eruption. And it makes you wonder, well, okay, so if the government has found a way to control the weather, perhaps they're weaponizing it. And whether that could be used to create weapons, these storms as weapons against our own people or other nations, or perhaps even with these other nations with having the ability to do this, perhaps they're manipulating weather. Perhaps there is some sort of weather manipulation warfare going on. I don't have any evidence of that, and that's certainly not something that I see a whole lot, but it's a question to ponder. If in fact this kind of power exists, if it's as strong as the critics claim, then we have some serious concerns. Now, what if it's being used what if our government is using this ability against its own people, creating storms, creating destruction? Well, let's be honest. One way to help kickstart a lagging economy is through rebuilding and by forcing a process. Reconstruction goes a long way to rebuilding economy. So you have to wonder, well, maybe there's something to that. Maybe all these storms and all these unusual weather patterns are in an effort to kickstart spending, kickstart an economic boom. You look at this cold weather here in the United States, and you have to wonder, well, perhaps this is being done to help boost the oil companies and the natural gas companies because they stand to make a ton of money on record energy demand. Not just electricity, but certainly heating oil, gas, natural gas for heating. Tremendous implications in terms of the economic boom potential for natural resources and energy companies right now. It's an interesting question, and it leads one to wonder. Gives some more credence to the idea of just how involved our government is with some other forces. Perhaps there is a conspiracy, that these companies have a greater control of our government than they should in the United States. And the same could be said certainly about other nations abroad that go through similar experiences. It leads one to question, perhaps there is something to this. Now, aside from weather control, there are those who argue that, well, HAARP is really used more for mind control. That they argue that that HAARP can modify the electromagnetic waves in the ionosphere, and it's believed that these waves can be altered at varying frequencies. And by altering these frequencies, it can make people feel good or bad. It can create a change in emotion for people who are sensitive to electromagnetic frequency, which it is a documented fact that there are people who are more sensitive to electromagnetic waves than others. We all carry a certain degree of sensitivity, but there are some who have actual physical reactions. And it is argued that there can be an emotional reaction. It can be used mentally in terms of creating and making us feel certain emotions, perhaps as a way to pacify the people when perhaps they should be angry about something, create a mood, so to speak, in a given area. as a way of either causing people to rise up or causing people to calm down, which from a government perspective and from a military perspective would be a tremendous weapon. You could cause civil unrest in an area that you want to cause civil unrest, or you could quell civil unrest in an area that you're trying to prevent things from getting out of control. It can be used offensively or defensively from a military perspective. So if that kind of power does exist, if HAARP is capable of doing that kind of a thing, which I'm uncertain that that's the case, but if in fact that can, then once again we're talking about another pretty amazing technology that can be weaponized. Now, the last thing that is commonly associated with the idea of HAARP and what HAARP can actually do are earthquakes. Now, it's argued that it can cause earthquakes because there's electrical disturbances that have been found to cause earthquakes. Now, the idea behind this is that creating a large electrical disturbance over fault lines, areas where there's already earthquake activity, could create an earthquake. That these waves, that when they're blasted into the ionosphere, of course, are reflected back down to the ground, and that these waves can then trigger an earthquake. So once again, we're talking about the implications of this being a weapon, right? This could be targeted over a particular area that you want to cause an earthquake, whether you want to cause it on your own soil or in an enemy soil, in an area that is already pretty volatile in terms of earthquake activity along fault lines. Certainly, there are parts in the Middle East that are situated along fault lines. Certainly, Iran. Of course, there are earthquakes throughout any of the mountainous regions, anywhere where there's mountainous territories, earthquakes can be found, as well as in the other places. Certainly, as we've found, there's been more evidence of earthquakes in the East Coast. So it leads one to wonder, in a relatively mild fault area, why all of a sudden there's this surge in earthquakes in the eastern part of the United States. Well, perhaps this is done by the United States government using this kind of technology, or perhaps this is being done by a foreign government using this kind of technology. As I mentioned before, it is widely believed that there are other sites that have control of this technology. Once again, Norway, Peru, which, for the record, Peru certainly has a share of earthquakes, Puerto Rico, which is an American territory, and Russia. Now, Russia is an intriguing one, certainly. That would lead many to speculate that perhaps there's something to the idea of it being weaponized. Perhaps there is some sort of global manipulation battle occurring between the United States and Russia. A new Cold War, no pun intended, but a new Cold War, so to speak, where there's this passive thing occurring. Perhaps this is something that's going on underneath it all that we just don't have any kind of ability to recognize. Now, my own thoughts on HAARP. Okay, so to me, this is an intriguing conspiracy. I believe that this technology is being used for more than what it's claimed it's being used. I do not buy the standard that this is just a mild-mannered research project occurring in Alaska. First off, for the government to spend the kind of money it's spent to keep this project going for the number of years it's kept it going, there's something here, and they believe there's something here, and there's enough evidence for them to continue to invest that they can develop technologies that can harness this ability. Whether it's to make life better, I don't know. More than likely, it would seem to make sense that this is probably a weaponized experiment when you consider who is funded and invested in this program. Talking about the Air Force, the Navy, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. Why would they be involved in anything that couldn't be weaponized? To me, that is a little suspicious. So, yes, I think that there are some more malicious things going on with HAARP. Do I believe it's mind control? Well, I'm not sure about the mind control thing. And nor am I 100% certain about the earthquakes. However, it would be possible. And certainly there does seem to be a realm of possibility within the mind control. I'm just not sure that there is, I just don't know enough about it. And to me, that almost seems a little too far out there in terms of what I'm even willing to digest for conspiracy. But I do believe that this can be used to control the weather. I do believe that of all of the explanations, whenever you heat a part of the atmosphere, you're controlling the weather in that part of the atmosphere. And when you change something in one part of the atmosphere, you create domino effects in others. And if you can steer and manipulate this type of radiation, these type of electromagnetic waves, then you can steer and manipulate weather. We've been trying for a number of years to gain control of the weather, in areas of drought, trying to, development of cloud seeding, doing everything we can to master our elements, to master this planet. So for me, it's not that so far out of the realm of possibility that the government or many other governments are working on ways to control the weather. There's a number of reasons that you would do this. As I'd mentioned before, creating poor weather in an area in an effort to rebuild, or in creating poor weather to be used to weaponize, to attack, so to speak, a country. There's a tremendous military aspect to this. Or you can use it for good. As I mentioned before, the idea of the cloud seeding, right? What if you can control weather that you can bring rain to an area that is in desperate need of rain? Then why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you try to create that kind of a balance if you could? So the potential for positive developments to come out of being able to master our environment, to master our weather, there's a lot of good things that could come out of that. However, as I've mentioned, we also have to look at the negatives that can come along with this, the destructive force of nature, how it can be used, if it could be manipulated, how it could be manipulated as a weapon, how it could be used to devastate nations, coastal regions of the world, particularly. So, that being said, I think that if anything, HAARP is manipulating weather. Now, the jury's still out. It's hard to gain definitive evidence to say for certain that that's the case. But that is my opinion. That is what I believe is happening. That's what I think HAARP is capable of doing. How large of a scale? I'm not sure. But I do believe that it is certainly capable of manipulating the weather. So, okay, well, that's what I have for everybody today. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. Love to get more feedback from everybody, what they'd like to hear me talk about. I went in a little bit of a conspiracy direction, but I certainly go all over the place with the show. So let me know. Email me, webofconspiracy@gmail.com. Send me a message on Twitter, Facebook, Google+. Love to get the feedback. And rate the show on Stitcher, iTunes. Of course, we're available on iTunes for those of you who don't listen via podcast on iTunes. But once again, thanks to everybody for listening. Next week, a best of episode of Black Eyed Kids. Have a great week and stay warm.